through or working through this morning on our journey. Just here having the last few days have been kind of riddled with some extra technical bugs for whatever reason, and maybe God's just telling me just take a break already. I don't know. But anyway, here we are, and it is Monday morning. This is an open forum week. By that, what I mean is I may have questions to ask. My goal is to not lead us necessarily through a text of Scripture. My goal is rather to just interact with you. I'd hope perhaps to do a couple of interviews, but I've had no takers and of saying, hey, I'll go on. I don't mind putting my face on there and doing an interview with you. And I can't do that on the fly, at least not this morning, I don't think, folks. So it would have to be tomorrow or Wednesday or Thursday. But if you would like to do that, if you would like to be a participant in together with me and do an interview, you could just let me know, and we can see if we can work it out and do a dry run just to see if it would work out okay for us to do one. So let me know, and we'll make that happen. So I will tell you, I am just kind of on the tired side a little bit, and so if I sound like it, yes, I am, and just different reasons for that. Didn't sleep well last night is one reason, but just many other things. So, but here I am. You can see my mug at this point in time. See, here's my mug. Ha ha! Yes, it's my coffee mug, and good seeing each of you this morning, Missy and Stephanie and Priscilla, and it looks like there's about a dozen of us in here that I can tell so far. Say good morning to us. The crowd loves to have us say good morning. That little bit of interaction is something that is good for the soul, and so I just want to encourage you to just pop in and say hi if you're able to do so. And it's good for us to hear from people. It builds a sense of community, a sense of collaboration, a sense of togetherness, a sense. This time of year, some people feel incredibly lonely, and I was thinking about this just this morning about the numbers of widows and widowers that there are, and some that most have kids away, kids gone. Kids somewhere else around the world or around even, across the country and just not close. So anyway, I was thinking about all of you this morning, and there's some that are younger as well. It's not just, people that are in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, but some that are, less than 50 perhaps, or around 50 that are in that category. So just to be aware of folks that you all are part of building others up, of encouraging each other, of inspiring others, of helping others to make their way in life. And so I want to encourage you with that this morning, that thought of the importance of just this time together. I'm reading some of the comments here. This group gives me a reason to get up in the morning. Well, guess what? It does me too. It gives me a reason to get up in the morning as well. So just letting you know, I don't know, it's just something has been off the last 3 or 4 days in this broadcast. But there's some comments. I'm going to take those back away because I can't seem to get my lighting adjusted for some reason. Something has changed. Good morning to all of you, Becky and Peter and Loretta and Dawn and Nell and Michael and Steve and Donna. Good morning to each and every one of you. And so, hey, here it will be a question I'm going to put out there for you to muse upon. So what parts of the Christmas story are among your favorites? And so we can put that out there. We'll look at some. Encourage you maybe to look at the scriptures, but what parts of the Christmas story are your favorite? That's the question. We can discuss that here a little bit this morning. Or with that, you might put on there what parts are your, what parts create questions for you. I mean, that's another question that you might be able to put out there. Again, folks, this morning, it is an open forum. I am not teaching through a passage this morning or a particular a book of the Bible this week. I've intended it to be more of an open forum this week, hoping that maybe a few people would say, hey, I would be willing to be a part of an interview and go on your camera and get you live with us, interacting and do an interview. I can't do that on the fly this morning. But if you're a person say, hey, I'd love to share my testimony, it might be 5 minutes that you're online. It could be 10. It could be half an hour. It could be the whole hour. Just let me know, and I would love to be able to include that among this crowd here. Someone was telling me just the other day, look at the new friends that they've made through COVID. And even though we don't, many of us, I mean, there are those of us here in the Belfast, Morrill area that know each other and get to interact, some in person, but there's a lot of folks that we've never met in person yet, and look forward to the time of being able to do that. And some live as far away as the Philippines. So, Lori, good morning to you. Lori Eaton, Dinah K. Dinah saying, thank God I'm in my new apartment. I am warm and thankful, thanks to my daughter, Shara, and son, Mark, and his wife, Lori, Tom, and Gail Buckland for their help. I am truly blessed. So where is that? I mean, you don't have to give us the address. I'm just curious as to where that could be. Are you out in Albion? Are you out in Waterville? Are you in Belfast? Are you in L.A., like Los Angeles? I know L.A. in Maine means Lewiston, Auburn. But Dinah, glad we could pray together with you. Don answering the question, the birth of Jesus, specifically the Star of Bethlehem star, is supposed to be visible today for the first time since the 1200s. You know, and I haven't really followed anything about that other than some saying, oh, the star means, you know, Christ is going to return in 2020, and that would be great if he did. Absolutely great if Christ were to return here right now. It would be awesome. This moment would be awesome. And but I haven't. Tell us more about that, or if somebody has researched a little bit more about this, that star is supposed to be visible today for the first time. So I guess we'll have to be watching tonight for that star to appear. Bridget, good morning to you. Jane, I'm not sure if I said good morning to you. Susan, I saw Brittany and Christina as well. Good morning to you. And Dinah saying she's moved out to Waterville. So Becky had a wonderful group come to sing carols. What a blessing. And folks just taking it upon themselves to do those types of things, which is fantastic to see the grassroots effort of those things taking place. It is an absolutely phenomenal thing to see. That same group blessed families at the Skowhegan Homeless Shelter, which is Shelters by Jesus. My friend Richard Berry, who's the leader of that organization. And so a number of people, kids, families able to get stockings with some goodies in them, and so it's a great thing. So Don answering the question, what parts of the Christmas story are your favorite? The star. I mean, there's a lot about the star. If you think about the star and its appearance, I'm going to bring that up for us here. Really, it was the shepherds and the star, and I think that, not the shepherds, the wise men and the star. Oops, I got to get in the right book, back in Matthew. Okay, so the birth of Jesus is told about here. Let's get into chapter 2, the wise men. So Matthew chapter 2, it talks about this star, and then we're going to look at the comment that Don makes here in just a moment. Folks, I'm not promising this week the prettiest of broadcasts. I am not pretty. The wise men, Matthew chapter 2, after Jesus had been born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of Herod, Magi from the east came to worship, asked, where's the one who has been born King of the Jews? Now, I referenced yesterday a conspiracy. There you go. That's the conspiracy theory. And then the flight I mentioned in the message yesterday, the immigration and refugee situation. That is right here in Matthew chapter 2. So here we see the star. They came from the east. They were asked, where's the one born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. When Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he called together all the people's chief priests, teachers of the law, he asked them, where is the Messiah? Where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for that is what the prophet has written. So there's the star. John answering, quick Google look up, this year bright planets Jupiter and Saturn will align perfectly on December 21st to create what is commonly called the Christmas star or the Star of Bethlehem. According to NASA, Jupiter and Saturn align with one another every 20 years or so, but not nearly as close together as they will be in this year. Now, could there be something about that? There could. There are certainly things about many other things that are happening this year that we try to connect, or that we do connect to the second coming of Christ. A pandemic, the possibilities of plagues, possibilities of economic, when I say collapse, it'll lead to a complete change of economic system. But the star, there isn't reference to the star, to my knowledge, in reference to the second coming of Christ, but there certainly was in the first coming of Christ. And then we see this. How did these wise men know? And we'll talk about that this Sunday, actually. We're going to be talking about the exact timing of the birth of Christ or the death of Christ, or how some of what is written in Daniel, and then you can see the correlation over into Matthew and Luke, that is just astounding to see the accuracy that is there in that passage. So some talking about the star, Don giving us some background here on that Christmas star here in 2020 should be visible tonight, according to what Don is telling us here. And Jane, the birth of the is most profound for me, but also trust and the obedience that Mary and Joseph displayed. Both had to totally trust and not listen to people. Yeah, I mean, in fact, people would be telling them that they were probably kind of crazy. What are you talking about? You guys, you're kids, Now, it's likely that Matthew was older than Mary. Mary was likely 16 or younger when they got married. At least many people have said that along the way, that Mary was 14 maybe years of age. Joseph may have been as old as 18 or 20. The rules were some different back in those days, and there weren't necessarily biblical rules. When the concept of the teenage years even though they were teenagers, really it didn't come into play until the 1900s. And the thought of, what can a 19-year-old, what can an 18-year-old, what can a 17-year-old do, and things of that nature really didn't come into play until the 1900s. So to think about a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old, we think, that's illegal. Well, not in that day, and not in the way they lived. And they lived much shorter lives back then. But the fact that Mary and Joseph, as Jane is saying, the trust and the obedience. Now, I think having an angel show up to tell you what the angel told them, that certainly had an effect on them. And certainly had an effect that would cause them to want to run to obedience and not run from obedience. So Jane's bringing up a great illustration there. Nell talking about the miraculous conception. I mean, I'm going to go down a road just a short little ways, not very far. I'm thinking about this from a medical vantage point. Okay, so if you were a person in the medical field, you would be thinking about this, that conception and what had to happen. And of course, Mary said, "Well, how can this be? I'm a virgin," and so how can a virgin be pregnant? All kinds of different questions that come about, but God is able to do whatever God wants to do, and God certainly did something. I'm moving about here in my chair a little bit here, trying to get rid of there we go, a little bit of fuzz that's bothering me in the picture this morning. Bridget, is it a star? I know that Jupiter and Saturn are going to be close, so they'll appear as one giant star. It's been since the 1600s. Unfortunately, here I think it's cloudy tonight, perhaps. So 1200, 16. It's been 400 years. It's been 800 years. It's been 1,000 years. It's been a number of years anyway since this has happened. So Bridget speaking into this star. So it's something phenomenal for us to be looking at. Priscilla, I love that the angel appeared to the shepherds about Jesus' birth. Yeah, to me that's pretty phenomenal too, in the sense that he didn't show up and go to a bunch of world rulers. I mean, he could have shown up and gone to world rulers and said, "Hey, the Messiah is coming. The Messiah is about to appear." Well, the Romans, they weren't all excited about a Messiah. Now, the Jewish people, they were, but they missed it. At least that's what we think, that the Jewish people missed it. So, what Priscilla's saying, appearing to the shepherds, common, ordinary folk like me. And I would say you might probably agree with me, like you and me. It wasn't, it wasn't going over to Augusta to the State House. It wasn't going to Washington, D.C. to the White House. It wasn't going to, in fact, there wasn't really a Jewish capital per se, although the Romans probably had a city they used as their capital in the area of Israel, because Israel was a part of the Roman Empire at the time of the birth of Christ. Michael, I like what you spoke about with the angel speaking to the shepherds directly about Jesus, about the birth of Jesus. So Michael and Priscilla kind of going along there together. Good morning to Virgil, Linda. Good morning, Jessica. Good morning. Susan talking about the obedience. Hannah, good morning. And Tisha, good morning to you as well. The question that I have out there for us this morning that we're interacting around is this question. Is the question of what part of the Christmas story, what parts of the Christmas story are your favorite? So the wise men, that's it. I like that. This year, maybe for me, it's the wise men this year. Now, I like the whole of the Christmas narrative that is there. But having spent so much time in the study of Daniel this last year, or having spent so much time in the study of the minor prophets and a few of the major prophets, and considering prophecy and studying the David Jeremiah book, prophecy would be much, much, much on my mind. And why would these wise men know to be looking? Well, because they were from Persia, most likely. That's where Daniel had been, in that area of Persia, and he was well established, highly regarded. They would have known the prophecies that Daniel had given, were familiar with them, and they were watching. Perhaps even more than the Jewish people were watching. Those astrologers, if you will, from Persia, perhaps were watching more than the Jewish people were. Now, the Jewish people were perhaps longing more than the Persian people, perhaps. But to me, the idea of these astrologers coming along, when they came along, because they knew the history, they knew the story, they knew to be watching, they had seen the star, and they came to worship. So that's here in Matthew chapter 2 that we've looked at. That he could have been born anywhere, but God chose a lowly stable. Becky is saying, get the right person here. Yes. A lowly stable. What's that mean? I mean, what is a lowly stable? A lowly stable is, they had cattle there. And yesterday I referenced a stinking. It was literally stinking. But it depends. If you're a farm person, an outdoor person, if you have horses or cattle or pigs or chickens or something of that nature, the smells of a farm may not bother you, and you might not say that it stinks. So to be born in a cave, really. A lot of times caves were used for barns, and there were other buildings that were established as barns. They were not only caves, although often caves were used. You'd think, well, then they had thousands of caves. They didn't have thousands of caves. They did have buildings, but it was a stable. Many do think perhaps that particular stable may have been a cave or downstairs. And Sonia here answering the question, barns smell awesomeness to me. There's probably a few others that would say the same thing. The smell of horses and hay is a wonderful thing. I don't mind being around the dairy smell at all. I grew up on the dairy farm, and but however, the smell does linger. It will. The odor does linger, but that's where Jesus was born, among the cattle. He wasn't born in a palace. He wasn't born with, maybe they could run upstairs at the innkeeper's inn and get hot water or something. We don't know any of those things. Susan saying, the wise men know because they were searching for answers. And there's a lesson in what Sue is saying to us here. Susan is talking about these wise men searching for answers. One of the ways that we become intelligent is by asking questions, by looking for answers. So we're asking questions. Digging into the Bible is the same way. When you dig into the Bible, you ask questions. Well, I wonder why that word is there. I wonder why that verse is stated the way that it's stated. I wonder why this order is the way that it is. I wonder why he repeats these words so frequently. So frequent repetition. There we go. In a passage of Scripture, asking questions. It's how we learn. That is actually a key formula in outstanding education, is learning to help people ask questions, to help students ask questions so that they have questions, so that they want to know what the answers are. And, we've been kind of taught rote learning much in our society, in our culture. We study, the answers to the test. As long as you can answer the questions on the test and get an A, you're smart. That's not true. You're smart if you can think. And so Now, knowing answers is not a bad thing. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But learning to be a person that can think puts you into a different classification. And Sue talking about the wise men looking for answers. Fran, good morning to you over there on the hill. Nell saying, seek and ye shall find. We are encouraged to seek after the Lord. Seek and you will find. Knock. Now ask. Now I can't put these three together this morning. Ask, seek, and knock. That's the order. Ask and it will be given you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. There's kind of a progression there, a necessity of us doing those types of things in our spiritual pursuit. Our spiritual pursuit should be both a comforting and easy thing, but also a difficult and challenging thing. It is all of that. To seek after the Lord. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. Don't worry about all these other things. That's what the passage says in Matthew chapter 6. But instead, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you. So, what else? Give me some others. Now, maybe we've hit all that we're going to hit this morning. The question of the morning is what part of the Christmas story are your favorite? Or I will state that a different way, not only your favorite, but what parts of the Christmas story might be perplexing to you. What parts of the Christmas story could be head scratchers to you? Or what parts of the Christmas story warm your heart? Or what parts of the Christmas story challenge your soul? So I'm using this line, what parts of the Christmas story are your favorite. Maybe I'll change that to what parts of the Christmas story challenge you. So let me put it that way. What parts of the Christmas story challenge you? Challenge or inspire. There. There. You've got it. I forgot to take it off as I changed it, but there, I changed it. That he came to be with me. Vonda sharing that. So, he came to be with us. And I'm seeing Lori's comment there too. We'll come back to that. But that he came to be with us. Yeah, and we talked about that some yesterday, or really we talked about that Saturday night. We'll talk about it again Thursday night. He came to be with us. Right now. It isn't just eternal life in heaven that we get to be with God someday. He is God with us today. And lives with us, lives within us, dwells among us, and that is Jesus. And that is an inspiring part. That is a favorite part of the Christmas story. Lori's saying this might be silly, but my favorite part is when the wise men set off on their way towards Bethlehem, animals following out of curiosity. You know, creation sometimes is much more aware of what's going on than we are. I'm going to show you a verse out of Romans chapter 8 that addresses that. Let me take us down to Romans chapter 8. Down at verse 18, Paul picks up right up here at the top of the page. His I consider sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. And think of the glory that came with the angels, and that we will get to experience ourselves, that type of glory that will be revealed in us, not just around us. It says, for the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. Now, when it's talking about for the children of God to be revealed, for us to experience the fullness of Christ, for it to be known that, oh, these are children of God. It says in verse 20, this is Romans chapter 8, for the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of him who subjected it. Who would that be? You could say it was Satan, but you think about the fall of man and how the fall of man impacted all of creation. So the will of the one who subjected it, you could say, well, is it God? Is that Satan? Is it man? All of that is a part of it, because God had told Adam that when you sin, these things will happen. And so the fall upon creation has happened. So Romans chapter 8, verse 20, for the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. And here's the verse 22. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. And there are other places where it is penned, where it is written. Jesus says that if you don't praise me, the rocks will cry out. So in that sense, with what Lori is saying, the animals following in curiosity, So that aspect. I've asked the question, what parts of the Christmas story challenge or inspire you? Stephanie, angels announcing the birth of Jesus. Let me put that up there so you can see it. Angels announcing the birth of Jesus, how he chose to come in such a simple way, but he is worshipped as the King of Kings from the beginning. I wonder what this must have been like for Mary and Joseph. Well, we do know, when you go back over to the story, to the narrative in Matthew, in chapter... No, Luke chapter 2. Getting the right book here. You have to be thinking about what book we're in. Luke chapter 2. When the shepherds came, it tells us down in verse 19, at the appearance of the shepherds, when the shepherds appeared as they did. Verse 19. The shepherds were there. Verse 17 says, when they'd seen him, they spread word concerning what had been told to them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said. But Mary treasured up these things and pondered them in heart. So that was Mary's response. And we know earlier when Mary had visited with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth talked about how John leaped in her womb. There was a song that came over, the Magnificat, it's called. Is that back in chapter 1 or is that back in Matthew? I don't always memorize those things. Yes, Luke chapter 1, Mary's song, the Magnificat, down in chapter 1, verses 46, Mary's song of praise. So she is singing this song of praise to the Lord. And so this is what's going on within her. So speaking, Stephanie, talking about how he chose to come in such a simple way, worshipped as King of Kings from the beginning. I wonder what it must have been like for Mary and Joseph. Well, that's part of it. But yeah, there's more. I mean, and that is the question. That type of question is something that takes us back. Yesterday I referenced how or Saturday night, how we look back through the lens of history. But what would it have been like if we had actually been there, physically been there with them in that first occurrence? We can't look back. There was no, had there been no written text, and we didn't know if we were experiencing for the very, very first time what they were experiencing, it would be, what would it be like? Great question, Stephanie. Jane says, trust is all through the story. Mary going to stay with Elizabeth when she was first expecting. Elizabeth also expecting at an old age, trusting God and his timing. Yes. And that is an encouragement to us this morning, just to be able to trust God and His timing for all kinds of things. And there are different folks in the chat this morning waiting on God's timing for different things. So to wait on God's timing, absolutely. Susan says this. She says I guess the question isn't going to quite make it on the screen for you. It says it's a curious thing that Jesus comes as a baby. A part of the Trinity, the same one who created all of creation, came as a baby, brought up by this young couple. Imagine the many times Mary pondered these things in her heart. I mean, yeah. And I wonder that. Why didn't he just come as a man? I mean, why didn't he just full form show up as a man? The writer of Hebrews gives us some insight in that he was tempted as we are in all ways, yet without sin. Now, did he never backtalk his parents? Did he never say no? Did he never, those types, that creates curiosity. What was it like for Jesus to be a little boy? Brittany saying, the wise men have always intrigued me. They were men of science, which we see as an anti-believing group in our day, actually. More so than in their day. In that day, science was much more connected to the supernatural realm than limited to the human realm. The limitations of science to humanity didn't really start taking their full weight until the mid-1800s. And then into the 1900s, and then into the latter half of the last century, of the 20th century, is when we really began to delineate between the supernatural and God factors and scientific factors, because we want to write God out of the equation. In fact, science had its origins, math had its origins in faith, in the spiritual realm. In fact, much of science, much of modern medicine has to do with Christians trying to find answers to these things. But we do see them as anti-believing groups. Not always. I mean, there are fantastic Christian scientists. There are fantastic Christian philosophers who talk about the meta-narrative in what is real and what is not real, and all those things, even in our day, rooted in Christianity. However, it is some strong in our day. But making those connections, living in the 20th century, 21st century, as we are, I guess, Brittany, I'm thinking, you lived a little bit of the 20th century, mostly a 21st century individual, young lady, at your age. But what you have seen, what we have seen, those of us that are older, the changes that we have seen now, people older than me in the 1950s, 40s, and 50s, 60s, especially the 40s and 50s, science was the rule. If it seemed to disagree with science, you cast it aside, and that's where much of that came from. I never finished reading what you wrote here. The way they were able to deceive Herod at that time has always made me smile. They were following, I've got to get this, there's a lot of text in here. Let me finish up with Brittany here. The way they were able to deceive Herod at the time has made me smile. They were following and aware of what was happening, smart enough to not brag about what they found to Herod, a king. The wise men could have benefited from him, but chose God's path. Oh, that's great insight, Brittany. That is fantastic. For us to choose to follow God's path. Sometimes it might look easier to follow the world's path, but to choose to follow God's path. And we have those choices. I did some counseling yesterday afternoon, and one of the issues that came up in the complexities of living that bring pressure and stress into life is the way our culture is taking so much away from God, the opposite direction of God. And so people that are in their, especially people in their 20s and 30s, or 20s and younger, actually, I'm trying to go that direction, 20s and younger, are being faced much more forcibly than older people, old geezers like me, with the prospect of how do you deal with the whole sexual, I don't want to call it revolution, re-identification is what perhaps I would call that. And yes, we have our Christian answer, but when you're a college student in a college classroom, in a secular environment, voices around you are telling you how wrong you are, and the pressure that comes with that is a part of what we live with. And to choose to walk God's path is become we're going to have to be much more resolute to choose to walk God's path, as the wise men did, as Brittany brings up. I'm going to take the comments off here for a moment and read to you what Peter said. He said, I'm going to read this to you. In Micah 4:8, 800 years before the birth of Christ, the prophet wrote, "As for you, watchtower of the flock, stronghold of daughter of..." Location of this tower is just outside of Bethlehem. Some of you are wondering, watchtower, what is that? It's a tower. You go up the tower and you watch. It's like a fire tower. But this was a sheep watching tower. Used as a watchtower of the flock to be used for temple sacrifice. These were the best shepherds and kept in the best conditions. On the floor of this tower was the birthing place for the lamb. All who would believe. When the lambs were born, the shepherds who were out in the flock, keeping watch over the flocks, ran from the field to the tower. They knew exactly where to look. There on the floor of Migdal Eder, they found Mary, Joseph, the baby Jesus, wrapped in the birthing strips, laying in a feed manger for a crib. The baby whom Christ being born in that very spot, out where the sheep, now I've taught and thought of the sheep as being the lowest common. Now maybe they were watching over the sheep of the sacrificial lambs, the sacrificial sheep, or maybe they were not. There's speculation of these things. However, the insight that does come from this, and perhaps maybe Vonda has heard this before herself. I read something about this just the other day, and it makes you think. Certainly about the strips, certainly about the place where those lambs were kept and those lambs were brought, and the purpose of those lambs to cover sin. That is great stuff, Peter. Thanks for sharing that. Stephanie puts up this comment saying, I always struggle with Herod's jealousy and his murder of the innocent. In response, thankful for God's protection of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And that is one of those things that does cause some people to say, well, if God is something like that, to allow for the murder of hundreds, probably hundreds of little children to be killed like that, the slaughter of the innocent. If God, and that is a question that causes some people to push back and revolt from the faith that God would allow something like that, but yet it's fulfillment of prophecy. And some would say, well, weren't those children important? Weren't they precious? God allowed this here. Good to have you slide in here with us this morning. I've had a question up there this morning for you. I'll throw out there again, if anybody would be open to maybe coming online, being on camera from the comfort of your own place tomorrow to share your testimony. I would certainly love to have you along to be able to share your testimony with us. We would love to have, would like to do that. I think I can make that work. We'd have to practice it though. So this week, talking about Christmas, maybe we'll talk some about Christmas traditions. We might even talk about Christmas heartache this week, because there is plenty of heartache at Christmas. Globally and personally that people endure, and that would be something we can certainly talk about and pray about this week in this open forum as we consider here this morning. Luke, no wonder why I'm in Matthew still. Okay, there we go. That's why it didn't pop up. Yeah, because I was still in Luke. talking treasures presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to the country by another route. And then in verse 13 it says, when they had gone, an angel child to kill him. So he got up, took the child, called my son. And how we look at immigration, how we consider refugees. Jesus can relate with the refugees. Jesus refugees and immigration, and there is some of that we see here. So since you guys are commenting, I wasn't going to say anything. My stream is acting up. There is zero I can do. There's really no sense even of us commenting about that because I can't fix it. It's just the internet that we have. There's no adjustments I can make. But I do appreciate you letting me know that it is flickering out there. It is. So, Virgil, maybe we can work it out to get you. We can do one of two, or we could do something version and share that with people. I have that ability too, I think. So,